The year is 1450. Within the hallowed halls of the Benedictine monastery of St. Michael, life unfolds in a rhythm of prayer, work, and study. But beneath the veneer of pious routine, whispers of change begin to stir. Brother Thomas, a scholar amongst monks, finds himself drawn to forgotten corners of the library, where ancient secrets lie dormant. One blustery afternoon, while cataloging the monastery's collection, Thomas stumbles upon a hidden cache, texts penned in ancient Greek, remnants of a forgotten age. He recognizes fragments of Plato and Aristotle, philosophers whose ideas have been cautiously filtered through centuries of church doctrine. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, Thomas begins to translate the texts. He pores over the faded words, deciphering concepts of reason, logic, and natural philosophy that challenge the prevailing dogma. A seed of doubt is planted in his mind. The philosophical musings begin to weigh on him. Thomas finds himself questioning the absolute authority of the Church, pondering the nature of humanity and its place in the cosmos. The monastery's rigid structure suddenly feels confining. The monastery of St. Michael, a bastion of faith and learning, stands as a testament to the enduring power of the Church. Within its walls, scribes meticulously copy religious texts, preserving the knowledge of the past and shaping the understanding of the present. Daily life is governed by the rhythm of prayer and work. From the early morning chants to the evening vespers, the monks dedicate their lives to the service of God, their days marked by ritual and devotion. During meals in the refectory, silence reigns as scripture is read aloud. Thomas, however, finds his mind drifting, caught between the comforting familiarity of tradition and the unsettling allure of newfound knowledge. He confides in Brother Mark, a younger monk known for his own intellectual curiosity. Mark listens with rapt attention, intrigued by the possibilities, yet fearful of the consequences. He warns Thomas to tread carefully. The ancient texts become a dangerous obsession. Thomas feels compelled to share their wisdom, to ignite the same spark of questioning in others. But he knows that such ideas could be seen as heresy, a threat to the established order. Risking excommunication, Thomas begins to secretly copy excerpts from the texts, concealing them within the pages of his prayer book. He dreams of a world where reason and faith can coexist, where knowledge is not feared but embraced. Meanwhile, beyond the monastery walls, Lady Annalise, a noblewoman of keen intellect and independent spirit, finds herself increasingly frustrated by the limitations placed upon her by her birth and station. She yearns for knowledge and a life beyond the confines of courtly duties. And as the seeds of reason begin to sprout within the monastery walls, a new player arrives on the scene. Master Erasmus, a traveling scholar known for his unorthodox views, seeks refuge within the monastery, bringing with him a treasure trove of classical learning and a spirit of intellectual rebellion that will soon challenge the very foundations of their medieval world. He carries forbidden knowledge and classical texts. Lady Annalise resided in the magnificent Valerius estate, a place of beauty and privilege, yet it felt like a gilded cage. Her days were filled with embroidery, music, and social calls, but her mind craved something more substantial than the endless rounds of pleasantries. She observed the stark contrast between her life of luxury and the lives of the peasants toiling in the fields. The injustice gnawed at her, sparking a nascent sense of discontent and a yearning for equality. During formal dinners, the conversations revolved around land disputes, arranged marriages, and courtly gossip. Annalise found herself increasingly detached, her thoughts wandering to questions that dared not be spoken aloud. She sought solace in the estate's library, a vast collection of illuminated manuscripts and ancient texts. While access was restricted for women, she would sneak in during the late hours, hoping to satiate her hunger for knowledge. One day, a traveling merchant arrived at the estate, his cart laden with exotic goods from distant lands. He subtly introduced Analyze to new ideas, whispering of lands where knowledge was freely shared and societies were governed by reason. Among the goods, the merchant gifted her a small, leather-bound book. Its pages contained excerpts from classical philosophers, advocating for reason and challenging the divine right of kings. This marked the true beginning of her intellectual awakening. She devoured the book in secret, its words resonating with her deepest convictions. The world, she realized, was far more complex and nuanced than she had ever imagined. Analyze cautiously shared some of the book's ideas with her trusted handmaiden, Ilara. While Ilara was hesitant at first, she was intrigued by the promise of a more just society. Unbeknownst to Analyze, Lord Valerius, her elder brother, embodied the strictures of their social class. He believed in the divine right of kings, the necessity of social hierarchy, and the absolute authority of the church. The restrictions placed upon women of her station became increasingly unbearable. She yearned for the freedom to pursue knowledge, to engage in intellectual discourse, and to contribute meaningfully to the world. In the quiet solitude of her chambers, Analyze began to chronicle her thoughts and ideas in a private journal, a dangerous act of defiance against the constraints of her world. It was the first step towards claiming her own voice. Lord Valerius, ever vigilant, began to notice subtle changes in Analyze's behavior. Her increasing detachment, her late-night visits to the library, these did not escape his attention. A seed of suspicion was planted, threatening to expose Analyze's nascent rebellion. The arrival of Master Erasmus was as quiet as the fall of snow, yet his presence promised a thaw in the rigid winter of thought. He entered the kingdom not with a fanfare, but with the slow, deliberate pace of a man carrying a weight far heavier than the leather-bound book strapped to his donkey. The town of Ethelberg was a microcosm of the kingdom itself, a vibrant tapestry woven with threads of commerce, labor, and faith. Master Erasmus, ever the observer, took in the sights and sounds, searching for fertile ground to sow the seeds of his wisdom. From the heights of St. Michael's Library, Brother Thomas watched the arrival of the scholar. A ripple of anticipation stirred within him, a feeling that the wind was about to carry something new and unfamiliar through the monastery walls. In the heart of the town square, Master Erasmus erected a makeshift lectern, a simple wooden crate upon which he laid open the forbidden texts of the ancients. His voice, though aged, carried with it the weight of centuries, drawing listeners from every corner of Ethelberg. Drawn by the murmur of forbidden knowledge, Lady Analyze ventured into the town, shedding her noble garments for the cloak of anonymity. She listened, captivated, as Master Erasmus spoke of reason, of human potential, of a world beyond the confines of tradition. Drawn to the scholar's words, Brother Thomas sought him out. Their meeting was quiet, unassuming, yet it marked the beginning of a bond forged in the shared pursuit of knowledge, a fellowship against the encroaching darkness of ignorance. Within the hallowed walls of the library, the two scholars delved into the forbidden texts. Master Erasmus shared his knowledge of the classical world, while Brother Thomas, with his meticulous scholarship, began to translate and disseminate these radical ideas, slowly, cautiously, amongst those who would listen. Under the cloak of darkness, Lady Analyse sought out Master Erasmus, eager to learn more. Their clandestine meetings in the garden became a sanctuary where she could shed the constraints of her noble birth and embrace the liberating ideals of the Enlightenment. From his high tower, Lord Valerius watched the gatherings in the town square with growing unease. He saw in Master Erasmus not a scholar, but a rabble-rouser, a threat to the established order. The seeds of discontent were being sown, and Valerius knew he had to act before they bloomed into rebellion. Within the monastery's hidden chamber, Brother Thomas toiled tirelessly, his quills scratching against parchment. He knew the risks he was taking, but the fire of knowledge burned too brightly within him to be quenched. He would spread the word, even if it meant defying the authority of the Church. Word of Master Erasmus's teaching spread like wildfire, drawing ever larger crowds to the town square. The debates grew more heated, the questions more challenging. The people of Ethelberg were awakening, their minds opening to the possibility of a different world. The time for observation was over. Lord Valerius summoned his soldiers, his face a mask of grim determination. He would silence the voice of dissent, crush the seeds of rebellion, and restore order to his kingdom, no matter the cost. Brother Thomas wrestled with the words before him. Each translated sentence felt like a transgression, a whisper of rebellion against the divine order he had sworn to uphold. The concept of inherent human rights, devoid of royal or papal decree, was a dangerous seed taking root in his mind. Lady Analyse, under the guise of piety and charitable work, dared to educate the women of her household. She believed knowledge was not a privilege but a birthright, a subtle act of defiance against the established hierarchy that deemed women subservient and unlearned. Master Erasmus, moving from town to town, sowed the seeds of classical wisdom. His lectures, often held in public squares and dimly lit taverns, attracted a diverse audience, from curious merchants to skeptical priests. But with each new convert came increased scrutiny from the Church. Lord Valerius, a man of action and unwavering conviction, saw the kingdom through a lens of order and control. Justice, in his eyes, was swift and decisive, serving the interests of the nobility and maintaining the established power structure. He viewed any deviation from this order as a threat to be extinguished. The act of translation became an act of rebellion. Brother Thomas, burdened by the weight of his secret, sought anonymity in the dissemination of his work, hoping the ideas would take root without exposing him to the wrath of the Church. At social gatherings, Lady Analyse subtly challenged the status quo, questioning the divine right of kings and advocating for the fair treatment of peasants. Her words, cloaked in politeness, pricked at the conscience of the aristocracy. The Church's suspicions grew into outright accusations. Master Erasmus found himself increasingly targeted by the Inquisition, his lectures monitored, his movements scrutinized. The pursuit of knowledge had become a dangerous game. Lord Valerius tightened his grip on the reins of power, increasing patrols throughout his lands and suppressing any whispers of dissent. He saw the Enlightenment as a viper, its venom capable of poisoning the very foundations of his authority. The internal conflict within Brother Thomas reached its apex. He openly challenged the abbot's traditional views, arguing that reason was not an enemy of faith, but a path to a deeper understanding of God's creation. His heresy did not go unnoticed. Lady Analyse, risking her reputation and her security, channeled her wealth and influence into supporting those who sought knowledge and challenged the status quo. Her acts of quiet rebellion were a beacon of hope in a world shrouded in darkness. The pressure mounted, the threat became too great. Master Erasmus, forced to choose between his life and his beliefs, made the difficult decision to leave the kingdom, carrying the seeds of enlightenment to more fertile ground. Lord Valerius, convinced he had averted a crisis, vowed to redouble his efforts to maintain order. He saw the departure of Erasmus as a victory, a decisive blow against the forces of chaos. But the seeds of doubt had been sown, and the winds of change had begun to stir, threatening to uproot the foundations of his world. Lord Valerius surveyed the bustling marketplace below, a knot forming in his stomach. The faces seemed different, less subservient, their eyes holding a spark of something he couldn't quite define but deeply distrusted. The reports spoke of unsettling whispers, ideas of equality, of individual liberty, spreading like wildfire through the lower classes. Valerius slammed his fist on the table. This was no mere peasant grumbling. This was something far more dangerous. "Find the source of these rumors," Valerius commanded his captain of the guard, his voice low and menacing. "I want to know who is poisoning the minds of my people, and I want them silenced permanently." Unbeknownst to Valerius, the source he sought was hidden within the quiet walls of the monastery. Brother Thomas continued his clandestine translations, each word a spark that threatened to ignite the tinder of discontent. Lady Annalise, meanwhile, used her position to subtly sow the seeds of change. She engaged in conversations with the common folk, listening to their grievances and offering quiet encouragement, planting the idea that a better world was possible. Master Erasmus, the wandering scholar, continued to spread his humanist teachings, challenging the dogma of the Church and encouraging his students to question everything. His words found fertile ground in the minds of the young and inquisitive. The Black Death, though receding, had left an indelible mark on the land. Entire villages lay abandoned, their populations decimated. The social order had been shaken to its core, creating a vacuum where new ideas could take root. With fewer laborers available, the value of their work increased. Peasants began to demand better wages and fairer treatment, challenging the traditional feudal system that had bound them to the land for generations. Valerius witnessed this shift with growing unease. The peasants were becoming bolder, less willing to accept their lot. He saw it as a direct threat to his authority and the established order. Brother Thomas, emboldened by the changing times, increased his efforts to spread the forbidden knowledge. He entrusted his translations to travelers and merchants, knowing that they would carry the seeds of reason to distant lands. Lady Annalise, defying convention, established a school for girls on her estate, believing that education was the key to unlocking their potential and challenging the limitations imposed upon them by society. The tension reached a breaking point. Master Erasmus, accused of heresy, found himself facing an angry mob, fueled by fear and superstition. The seeds of reason had been sown, but the harvest was far from certain. The battle between tradition and progress had begun in earnest. Brother Thomas worked late into the night, his hand cramping as he meticulously copied the translated texts. Each word felt like a spark, capable of igniting a firestorm of thought. He knew the risks, but the potential reward, the enlightenment of minds, was too great to ignore. Lady Annalise used her influence to subtly promote education among the women and children of the estate. She shared stories of classical heroines and spoke of inherent rights, planting seeds of equality in fertile ground. The old tutor frowned from the doorway, but she pressed on, emboldened by the truth. Master Erasmus, undeterred by whispers of heresy, continued to lecture in the town square. His words, laced with classical wisdom and humanist ideals, drew crowds of eager listeners. Some were genuinely curious, others were spies sent by Lord Valerius, but all were touched by the power of his intellect. Lord Valerius grew increasingly alarmed by the spread of these dangerous ideas. He saw them as a direct threat to his authority and the established order. He doubled his efforts to suppress dissent, but the seeds of discontent had already been sown. Under the cover of darkness, Brother Thomas distributed his translations to trusted contacts, scholars, merchants, and even a few sympathetic priests. Each delivery was a gamble, but he believed the risk was worth taking to spread the light of knowledge. Lady Annalise convened secret meetings with local artisans and merchants, discussing ways to challenge the rigid social hierarchies and promote economic opportunity for all. She spoke of meritocracy and the importance of individual talent, concepts unheard of in their feudal society. Master Erasmus's outspoken views attracted the attention of the church authorities, who saw him as a dangerous heretic. He was summoned to defend his teachings, and his passionate defense of reason and individual liberty only further enraged his accusers. Lord Valerius, determined to crush the burgeoning dissent, increased the patrols and surveillance throughout his domain. He ordered his soldiers to arrest anyone suspected of spreading subversive ideas, casting a pall of fear over the land. To ensure the safety of their discussions, Brother Thomas led a select group to a hidden chamber beneath the monastery. It was a place of refuge, where they could speak freely without fear of reprisal. Lady Annalise contributed her insights and resources to the underground movement, her noble status providing a shield of protection, and her unwavering conviction inspiring hope among the oppressed. Master Erasmus, with his vast knowledge and unwavering commitment to truth, became the intellectual leader of the underground movement, guiding their discussions and inspiring them to challenge the status quo. Unbeknownst to the members of the secret meeting, Lord Valerius had discovered their location. He prepared to raid the monastery, determined to crush the rebellion before it could spread further. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of the Enlightenment in their kingdom. A chill wind swept through the monastery, not just of the season, but of a deeper unease. Brother Thomas felt it in the tremor of his hand as he transcribed the forbidden texts. The whispers had begun, rumors of dissent, of questioning, and of the church's response. At the Valerius estate, Lady Annalise observed the change in the village. The usual bustle seemed muted, replaced by a tense silence. Whispers of the Inquisition's arrival had reached even these high walls, casting a shadow over her burgeoning hope for a more just world. Master Erasmus, ever the observer, felt the shift in the air of the market town. The free exchange of ideas had been replaced by furtive glances and hushed tones. The Inquisition's presence was a suffocating blanket, threatening to extinguish the flame of enlightenment. Lord Valerius received the Inquisitor in his study. The man's presence was imposing, his words laced with implied threats. Valerius knew the Inquisition was a tool, and he intended to use it to maintain order, but he also felt a flicker of unease at its unchecked power. The Inquisitor's questions were subtle, probing for any sign of heresy. Brother Thomas, though fearful, held his ground, carefully choosing his words, praying that his secret would remain hidden. Lady Annalise faced the Inquisitor with grace, answering his questions about her interest in education and her unconventional views on social equality. She knew her position offered some protection, but she also understood the Inquisition's reach was long. The inquisitor cornered Master Erasmus in the library, accusing him of spreading dangerous ideas and corrupting the minds of the young. Erasmus, unyielding in his commitment to truth, defended the pursuit of knowledge, even in the face of death. From the shadows, Lord Valerius watched the inquisitor at work. He saw the fear in the eyes of the accused and felt a grim satisfaction. Order would be maintained, no matter the cost. The day of reckoning arrived. The public square was packed with onlookers, their silence broken only by the crackling of the pyre. A man, accused of heresy, was brought forward, his eyes filled with a mixture of terror and defiance. Brother Thomas, hidden in the crowd, watched in horror as the flames consumed the accused. The sight seared into his memory, a stark reminder of the price of dissent. In her chamber, Lady Annalise watched the smoke rise, her heart heavy with sorrow and resolve. The burning had not extinguished the flame of enlightenment, but fueled it with righteous anger. Master Erasmus, knowing his time was limited, prepared to leave, carrying the seeds of reason to new lands. Though one battle was lost, the war for enlightenment had only just begun. Brother Thomas found himself at a crossroads, the weight of his secret knowledge pressing down on him. The ancient texts offered a different path, one that challenged the very foundations of his faith. Could he reconcile reason with divine belief, or were they destined to remain forever opposed? Lady Annalise watched the villagers going about their daily lives. The inequities of their world were stark, and the whispers of equality ignited a fire within her. But to speak out would mean risking her position, her family's honor, perhaps even her life. Could she find the courage to defy the expectations placed upon her? The warning came late, but it was clear. Lord Valerius's men were closing in. Master Erasmus knew the price of disseminating forbidden knowledge. Arrest meant imprisonment, torture, and likely execution. But he was determined that his teachings would not die with him. Lord Valerius tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword. The whispers of dissent had grown louder, fueled by the heretical teachings of Erasmus and the dangerous curiosity of Brother Thomas. He would crush this rebellion of thought before it could spread further, restoring order to his domain. The abbot had summoned Brother Thomas, rumors of his heretical activities reaching his ears. Thomas knew he could no longer hide the truth. He presented the translated text, bracing himself for the abbot's wrath. "These are the words of reason, of understanding," he pleaded, "not of heresy." Lady Annalise penned a letter to a neighboring noblewoman, a known patron of the arts and education. She carefully worded her request for support, hoping to establish a school for girls, a place where young women could learn to read and think for themselves. She knew such an endeavor would be met with resistance, but she was determined to plant the seeds of change. With Lord Valerius's soldiers hot on his trail, Master Erasmus entrusted his most important writings to a young messenger. "Knowledge is a flame," he whispered, "and it must be kept burning." He watched the boy disappear into the crowd, praying that his message would reach its destination. Lord Valerius demanded information about Erasmus's whereabouts, his patience wearing thin. The villagers, fearful of his power, remained silent, but Valerius knew that someone somewhere was aiding the scholar. He would root out the truth, no matter the cost. Before the entire monastery, Brother Thomas confessed his transgression. He spoke of the ancient texts, of the power of reason, and of his struggle to reconcile them with his faith. He knew his words could lead to excommunication, but he could no longer live a lie. The silence that followed was deafening. In a secret chamber of her estate, Lady Annalise gathered a small group of women. She shared the ideas of Erasmus, speaking of liberty and the importance of knowledge. She encouraged them to question, to learn, and to strive for a better world. It was a dangerous act of defiance, but she felt she had no other choice. Erasmus was captured, but the seeds of change have been sown. The people hear the words, and the movement that will become the Enlightenment cannot be stopped now. Thomas knew that he had to spread the word still. He gave up being a monk to live a more secular life, but it was okay with him. He knew that his purpose now was to help educate the masses, and that is what he did. Lord Valerius received word of a peasant uprising in the neighboring province. Inspired by whispers of equality and liberty, the serfs had taken up arms against their feudal lords. He saw it as a contagion that needed to be stopped before it reached his lands. Brother Thomas heard of the revolt with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The ideas he had been translating were now bearing fruit, but the consequences were dire. He knew that violence was not the answer, yet he understood the desperation that fueled the rebellion. Lady Annalise learned of the uprising, and the brutal measures Lord Valerius intended to take. She questioned the wisdom of suppressing dissent with force, believing that dialogue and reform were the only paths to lasting peace. Master Erasmus, ever the advocate for reason and justice, openly discussed the philosophical underpinnings of the revolt. He argued that while violence was regrettable, the desire for liberty and equality was a natural and just aspiration. Lord Valerius, dismissing Annalise's pleas for restraint, mustered his forces and rode towards the rebellious province. He was determined to crush the uprising swiftly and decisively, setting an example for any who dared to challenge his authority. Brother Thomas, torn between his pacifist beliefs and his sympathy for the oppressed, prayed for guidance. He struggled to reconcile the ideals of the Enlightenment with the teachings of the Church, questioning whether violence could ever be justified. Lady Annalise, defying Lord Valerius's orders, used her resources to provide aid to the refugees fleeing the violence. She saw the human cost of the conflict and felt compelled to alleviate their suffering, offering food, shelter, and medical care. Master Erasmus, witnessing the brutality of the conflict, lamented the tragic consequences of unchecked power and the failure of reason. He realized that the path to enlightenment was fraught with peril, and that progress often came at a terrible cost. Lord Valerius, victorious but weary, surveyed the aftermath of the battle. The rebellion had been crushed, but the seeds of discontent remained, and he knew that the struggle for control was far from over. The cost of maintaining absolute power was weighing heavily on him. Brother Thomas ventured onto the battlefield after the fighting ceased, offering comfort and aid to the wounded, regardless of their allegiance. He saw the shared humanity of both sides and realized that true progress required compassion and understanding. Lady Annalise confronted Lord Valerius, her voice filled with sorrow and disappointment. She challenged his methods and argued that true strength lay not in oppression, but in justice and fairness. Their disagreement highlighted the fundamental conflict between the old order and the emerging ideals of the Enlightenment. Master Erasmus, together with Brother Thomas and Lady Annalise, reaffirmed their commitment to spreading the seeds of reason and enlightenment, despite the setbacks they had faced. They knew that the path to a more just and equitable society was long and arduous, but they remained determined to pursue it, driven by the belief in the power of ideas to transform the world. The seeds were planted, and they were determined to cultivate them, no matter the cost. Lord Valerius, his voice amplified by the hollow of the square, denounced the heretical whispers that threatened to undermine the kingdom's stability. He spoke of the dangers of questioning divine authority and the importance of adhering to tradition, his words laced with fear and thinly veiled threats. Brother Thomas, concealed within the crowd, felt a pang of guilt. Valerius's words, though harsh, resonated with the fears of many. The monk knew the path he had chosen was fraught with peril, but the pursuit of truth demanded courage. Lady Annalise, spurred by Valerius's public address, composed a carefully worded letter to the local bishop, subtly advocating for greater tolerance and understanding. She argued that intellectual curiosity and faith could coexist, and that suppressing new ideas would only breed resentment. Master Erasmus, undeterred by the growing opposition, continued to ignite the minds of his students. He challenged them to question everything, to seek knowledge from diverse sources, and to embrace the power of human reason. Under the cover of darkness, Brother Thomas continued his clandestine work, sharing his translated texts with those who sought knowledge beyond the confines of traditional dogma. The seeds of reason were being sown in fertile ground. Lord Valerius, tightening his grip on control, ordered the public burning of confiscated books deemed dangerous and subversive. The flames roared, consuming not just paper and ink, but also the potential for new ideas to take hold. Lady Annalise, defying societal expectations, publicly defended a young scholar accused of heresy, arguing for his right to express his views without fear of persecution. Her act of courage sent ripples of shock and admiration through the court. Despite threats of imprisonment, Master Erasmus continued to teach, drawing ever larger crowds. His lectures became a beacon of hope for those who yearned for a more enlightened world, challenging the established order with every word. Brother Thomas, summoned before a council of monks, defended his translations. He argued that the pursuit of knowledge, even from unconventional sources, was a path to deeper understanding of God's creation. His words, though bold, were met with skepticism and disapproval by many. Inspired by Brother Thomas's vision, a small group of monks, along with sympathetic townspeople, began construction of a new monastery in a secluded valley. This new sanctuary would be dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge, tolerance, and understanding, welcoming scholars and thinkers of all backgrounds. Lady Annalise, using her influence and resources, provided crucial support to the new monastery, ensuring its survival and growth. She saw it as a beacon of hope, a place where new ideas could flourish without fear of persecution. As the sun rose over the newly completed monastery, Master Erasmus addressed the assembled crowd. He spoke of the dawn of a new era, an era where reason and faith could coexist, where knowledge would be celebrated, and where the pursuit of truth would be the guiding principle. The seeds of the Enlightenment, though planted in difficult soil, had begun to sprout, promising a future where the world could be reshaped by the power of ideas.